I've never known quite how I'm supposed to feel about Bob Backlund. On the one hand, he was the 8th of nearly 150 WWE champions, holding the belt from, according to WWE.com, over 2,100 days between 1978 and 1983. Roman's got a fair way to go to beat that still. Bob would actually lose the title briefly in '79 to Antonio Inoki, but WWE has never officially recognised that change. When Inoki passed away in October 2022, Corey Graves actually called Inoki the first Japanese WWE champion, but this is still not officially recognised. Backlund would eventually lose his title to the Iron Sheik in early '83, who in turn would lose 4 weeks later to the up-and-coming Hulk Hogan, beginning his first and longest reign as champion. You might think that somebody who held the WWE title for that long might receive the legend treatment for life, but on the other hand, Backlund has been presented as a pretty weird bloke for the past 30 years. Backlund would win the title for a second time officially at Survivor Series 94, defeating Bret Hart, and would lose it at a non-televised event 3 days later to Diesel in just 8 seconds. At this point, I just want to really stress something. When I refer to him as a weird or an eccentric character, I'm really talking about the way he's been portrayed throughout my time watching wrestling. I'm well aware he's had a very long career before that, and if your view of Bob Backlund is different, I'd really love to hear your perspective. The first time I ever saw Bob Backlund was his entry in the 2000 Royal Rumble match, which was held in the arena he competed in many a time, Madison Square Garden, and he would last exactly 2 minutes. This is the same man who held the record for the longest Rumble performance through most of the 90s, a 61-minute showing in 1993. This was likely booked to surpass Ric Flair's legendary 59-minute run in the 92 Rumble, since he was on his way out of the company and will be back in WCW by early 93. The current record for the longest Royal Rumble appearance is held by Daniel Bryan, who lasted 76 minutes in the greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia. That's the name of it, by the way. The match itself was kinda pants. This record will likely never be broken unless they do another Greatest Royal Rumble, which had 50 participants, more than any other to date. In the 2000 match, Bob would enter at number 14, to the tune of Hail to the Chief, and a massive pop from the MSG crowd. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on commentary expressed confusion at Bob being here, with JR noting that he was running for Congress. More on that in a minute. As he enters the ring, he's immediately attacked by the Big Boss Man and Test, and is quickly part of a group effort to eliminate Rikishi. When I say part of, I mean he was on the outside of a pile of blokes joining forces to eliminate the biggest man in the ring. The rest of Bob's 2 minutes in the match is fairly unremarkable, as he blends in before being eliminated by the Intercontinental Champion Chris Jericho. Upon being sent over the ropes, Backlund wouldn't leave up the centre aisle, rather he would go up into the crowd. While I'm on the subject, the 2000 Royal Rumble match is one of the stranger ones in history. At repeated intervals in the match, Kaientai's Taka Michinoku and Funaki would interfere and be promptly thrown out of the ring. They were doing this in protest at not being officially entered into the match. Unfortunately for Taka, on his second attempt, he would be thrown out by Bossman and Gangrel and would smash his face on the floor, injuring himself in the process. Jerry Lawler on commentary, who had history with Taka over Brian Christopher trying to take the light heavyweight title off him in '98, revelled in this, repeatedly laughing as the clip was aired throughout the rest of the match. This Rumble also ended in dodgy fashion, as in storyline, Big Show threw The Rock out, only for himself to topple out over him. Over the next few weeks, Big Show would protest that The Rock's feet touched the floor first. And you could make the argument that they did, but we were supposed to pretend that Big Show was complaining without cause. This would be resolved at No Way Out the next month, where Big Show would earn his way into what would become the messy McMahon in every corner four-way at WrestleMania. After his Rumble appearance, Bob would have a brief run with WWE, where he would manage the at the time fresh-faced Eurocontinental Champion, Kurt Angle. This union would come to an abrupt end at WrestleMania 16 though, as on Sunday Night Heat before the event, Kurt would find out that Backlund was behind the idea of him having to defend both of his titles in one match, in which he would lose that night to Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. Angle would apply Backlund's own trademark move, the crossface chicken wing, ending Bob's brief 2000 run. When Bob was in the Rumble, JR and King were repeatedly making political references. As I noted earlier, Bob was running for Congress in Connecticut, in which he would eventually lose. Some in the media at the time saw Backlund's run as a dubious attention grab, following the success of Jesse Ventura being elected as governor of Minnesota the year prior. Bob's prior political experience was crass at best, declaring on an episode of Raw in '95 that he intended to run for president, even going as far as to getting into an altercation with a Bill Clinton impersonator at that year's Survivor Series. I'll level with you here, as someone whose knowledge of US politics mainly comes from The Daily Show when Jon Stewart was on it. I feel about as qualified to go further into US politics as Backlund himself, i.e. not very far. Remember how I started this video not knowing how to feel about Bob Backlund? As best I can tell from here, the weird stories about Backlund seem to ramp up. Legend has it that he would refuse to sign an autograph for a fan unless they could on the spot recite the names of every US president in order. From there, he would later emerge in TNA in 2007, where he would be portrayed as an absolute madman. He would briefly have an unexpected WWE return in 2016, where he would act as a life coach for Darren Young, offering such unhinged advice as never take advice from anyone. Many of these segments were filmed in such a weird way, with the two having a conversation while looking into the camera in separate locations, as if the two weren't allowed to be in the same room for some reason. The catchphrase from these segments was, "Make Darren Young great again." I wonder where they got that idea from. In 2013, Bob would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. In what felt like an odd choice, he was inducted by Maria Menounos, who had to explain on her Facebook page at the time that the two had a long friendship and that she had grown up as a fan of Bob during his time as WWE Champion. As you can likely imagine, his speech was eccentric, but honestly, rather inspiring, and if you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch it. He spoke well of Bruno Sammartino, who was also inducted that night, and he noted that Bruno paved the way before him. He also repeatedly called back to 3 words in reference to John Cena, who was sat on the front row. Those 3 words that were pushed by John for many years: never give up. He goes on for so long that Vince McMahon goes on stage to hint that he's running long. But honestly, I could have listened to him for hours. Bob's a weird dude, but also inspirational in his own way. Thank you for watching yet another wrestling channel. If you like this, please consider leaving a comment, clicking like or subscribing.